thank you everyone for taking a moment out of your Friday. And we're going to talk today about immunology. I know everyone has given a brief description of all of the products, but we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive today, specifically in regards to what these products do to the immune system. And the reason this is so exciting is because autoimmune disease is absolutely on epidemic level right now throughout the world. The reality is we're seeing so much of this disease in a variety of different forms. And it's exciting to be a part of a company that really has the opportunity to help patients, people, clients, however you want to look at this, and their quest to wellness in regards to immunology and the immune disease. So one of the things that I really like to focus on as I talk about overall wellness, and you saw that quote by Plato, the part can never be well unless the whole is well. And the reality is, if we don't start looking at taking wellness in a complete and its whole picture, we're really never going to get completely well and completely whole. And there's a lot of different variations out there as far as what constitutes wellness. But this system really has resonated with me on multiple levels. I call this the windmill of health, because if we have all the fins spinning around in a perfect balance, if you will, that windmill can be very effective, and our purpose drives it into the wind, and then that windmill, that shaft, goes into our DNA, into our epigenetics, and really makes a difference in our overall health. And again, just as Plato says, if we don't touch every part, then the whole suffers. And that is a reality. And so we'll talk a little bit more about this. The reason why, whether you call it omnichannel marketing, direct marketing, multi-level marketing, network marketing, let's just call it that, being able to connect with family, friends, in a wellness scenario, the reason why it resonates and is so effective is because it touches on most of these pieces of the windmill of wellness. And we'll talk more about that and how that all works later. But understand that because of this windmill's power, it's part of why ACTIVZ and that networking really has its power, because it touches on all of these pieces. Well, we're going to talk about one of those pieces, which is our immune system. So we're going to touch every piece of this slide, and we're going to talk in depth about it. Grab your notebooks. We're going to break this down into something that you can use with your clients, your family, whoever you're talking to. So again, you're going to have a really good understanding of the immune system in a very basic way, but hopefully very powerful. I love teaching. I love talking about medicine, but hopefully making it in a way that you understand. So when we start talking about the immune system, a lot of systems have, for example, the cardiovascular system has this main organ, the heart, that is its champion, that just goes out and, it's the main organ of that system. Well, the immune system doesn't necessarily have that. It's actually made up of quite a few different organs and tissues, and they work together trying to balance out both what we call a pathogen, or something that causes disease, and yourself, and so that your immune system doesn't attack yourself. And the hope is that it will pull all of that into balance. And what an autoimmune disease, auto means self, and immune, obviously. Autoimmune disease means that our immune system has gotten confused. And instead of just attacking the enemy, the pathogens, it starts to attack tissues inside of ourselves that often look like other proteins or pathogens that have been introduced to it. So it gets confused. And that's something that's very important to understand. Confusion or dysfunction is what makes autoimmune disease so dangerous, so prevalent. Now, this slide here is actually very important, just very basically what to understand. So the immune response, what happens is an infected cell will get gobbled up by a macrophage. A macrophage is nothing more than that. Macro means big and phage means eat. It's just a big eating cell. And it will consume that cell. It will then break it down, and so it's consuming the cell. It will break it down into individual pieces, and then it actually presents, just like it shows here, antigens, antigen complexes. It presents those complexes to the T cells. Now, those T cells will produce then a receptor to that antigen that matches that antigen, and usually almost identical, it will match that antigen. And then that antigen becomes its call signal to action. And as it starts to see more of these antigens on the outside of infected cells or in viruses or what have you, it reproduces, as we can see down here, and you can see each of those have the little receptors. And then it will go out and be able to mark and identify infected cells with that antigen, and then mark it for destruction, if you will. Mark it so that it can be eliminated. Now, again, not super complicated, but this is really how this happens. And it can be an infected cell that the macrophage, again, this cell here that it ingests, it can be a virus. It can be a bacteria, and then it chews that up, breaks it down into its protein components, produces the antigens for the T cells, and then the T cells will remember that antigen. And part of the key there is there are T memory cells that will remember that antigen for years and years to come, so that the next time that you're introduced to that bacteria or virus or what have you, your body will fight and mount a response, an immune response, to fight off that infection, okay? Now, this slide really it broadened us out just a little bit. We've been talking about phagocytes, again, macrophages. We've been talking about T cells. There are other cells involved, beta cell or B cells and killer cells. So again, these cells play a role, but we have to remember that it's the phagocytes that chew up the antigen or chew up the invader, present it to the T cells, and then the B cells will get involved because then they produce more and more antibodies for the body to recognize. Okay? This is, again, just a different slide to show how complex it really can be. I put this slide up not to confuse you, but to let you know that as we start to affect the immune system and the immune response, a lot of tissues start to then get involved. Dendritic cells are actually part of our nerve system. And again, a lot of systems get involved as these chemicals start to get released to our body. These are some of the main cells that make up our immune system. And again, unfortunately, depending upon how they were classified and when they were classified, they call them sometimes different names. For example, on this right lower, this NK cell is actually a T cell. So it depends upon how everything is quantified. We see our macrophage over here. And then we're going to talk a little bit as we end up here on mast cells. Mast cells, if you will, are the sentinel cells. They line our digestive system, our lungs, and our skin, primarily in those areas. And they are the sentinels. They are the lookouts. And when we make some of these antigens, the mast cells will take those up. And if then that invader comes in again and activates that antigen, then the mast cell starts to release its chemicals called exosomes. And those chemicals then activate the rest of the immune system. So before, I gave a talk that talked about these mast cells in our digestive system and how they really are the switch box, the control mechanism. They turn on the immune system unlike anything else. And you can see on this slide, even though it's a little fuzzy, that we have an antigen that is plugging in with a receptor Those receptors are versions of the antibodies that we saw here. And the mast cells will take some of those up as well and then use those as a trigger to initiate the rest of the immune system. Okay? So we can see that there's a resting mast cell here that has all of these different granules inside of it, and then an activated mast cell that has released a lot of those granules, those chemicals, out into the system to start the immune system responding and moving forward. Well, there's been a lot of confusion and a lot of research recently done on mast cells and their role. Initially, now this slide looks really confusing, but I don't want it to be that way. I'll kind of explain just the basics of what we need to know here. What we've found is that we used to think that those T cells were the only ones that were responsible for keeping a memory inside the immune system. And they're now finding that these mast cells are also key in keeping a memory of these antigens inside of our immune system. Why is that important? Because mast cells will continue to take on more and more data and more storage, more and more antibodies, unless they roll over through a process called apoptosis. Now that's where the old cell dies and a new cell comes and takes its place. That's happening all over in your body all the time. So it's nothing new. But the interesting thing about mast cells, when they roll over, they keep the critical memory of the antibodies, but they often lose those antibodies to self. And so it's important that we get those mast cells to roll over in a process called autophagy, where the old cells die off and new cells take their place. The reason this slide is important is because if mast cells, and this slide here really is a representation of the epigenetics of mast cells. On the positive side, mast cells and molecules that may promote EAE and MS, so basically may activate the immune system in a big way, are on this left side of your screen, at least that's the way I'm looking at it. And mast cell molecules that may attenuate EAE and MS, again, on the right side of the screen. Guess what those are? Those are epigenetic modulators. Have we heard that before? Have we heard epigenetic modulators and these foundational molecules? And so part of what keeps mast cells content, doing their job, not overreactive, are these foundational molecules that are epigenetic modulators. That's the key of this slide. And so that they don't overreact and become out of control. Well, what are these absolutely amazing epigenetic modulators? I'm thinking Link. If you can see your screen, I'm thinking Link. Link with its butyric acid has been really shown to be one of the most powerful immune epigenetic modulators they have found. Link is amazing. If you have patients that are on, I have patients, clients, associates, friends. If you have friends and clients who have allergies and their allergies are out of control, Link can help and often does. I have a friend now who is on Link, and every fall, she just has horrible outbreaks of her allergies. She doesn't this year because she's on Link. She is so excited she can't see straight. The reason is because every time people come over to visit her from August clear through November, the first things out of their mouth is, "I'm so sorry, who died?" Because she looks so terrible with her crying and everything that's going on. Okay? Optimend, tetrahydrocurcumin, foundational molecule, epigenetic modulator. Guess where it has very powerful effects? On this immune system that we're talking about. So Optimend, again, very powerful in modulating and balancing out that immune system so that it does not overreact. And finally, genomics. And again, I'm not saying finally genomics because it has any less power. The reality is genomics probably has as much research behind it as far as its ability to modulate the epigenetic sequence than the others. And there's so much research on all of these molecules that there really is no question about their effectiveness and what they will do. So we have really a power three. We talk about their ability to affect inflammation. We talk about their ability to help with digestion and leaky gut, and the list goes on and on. But remember as well that these power three, the trifecta, are very, very effective at modulating your immune system and balancing it out. And that it can be key in cutting down on your aches, your pains, etc. And it balances that out through making sure that those mast cells, the T memory cells, do not overreact and stay in balance. It's a beautiful thing. All right, so there we go. ACTIVZ, it is amazing. And I will just close with that, and I'm just going to leave this slide up so that you can see ways that you can strengthen your immune system if you want to do a screen capture. There's just some very simple things that you can do in addition to taking Link, OptimEnd, and genomics to really activate your immune system.